Good morning, Queen's Voice. Peter Kapalis here today. Obviously, you've seen the background, one of our favorite haunts, the Jax Inn Diner here on Northern Boulevard in Jackson Heights, Queens. Today we have a special guest. Paul King has joined us. Thank you for coming, Paul. Nice to meet you.
Be here.
We had to reschedule a few times, but we're happy he finally came sit down with us here. We wanted to talk to him. So for those of you who don't know or aren't following all the elections yet, Paul is running in the 5th Congressional District, which will cover all of the peninsula of the Rockaways, Far Rockaway, Bell Harbor, Breezy Point, Howard Beach, and I'm probably missed something, so what else did I miss that you're covering?
If you're going up Woodhaven Boulevard, go all the way to Forest Park, and then sweep yourself all the way to the Nassau County border, from Queens Village on down. So it's, for New York City, geographically, it's very large.
So large and very diverse.
Yes, extremely diverse.
Constituents as well.
Right.
All right, so Paul, you're running against a long-term established person, Gregory Meeks,
Right.
deep roots. Always an uphill battle, they say, to knock the incumbent off. But it looks like you've been getting traction. We've been seeing a lot of other folks covering your run, which is good. Tell us why you're running, what's important to you, and how everything's been going thus far, going against a long-standing incumbent.
Okay. Well, I ran 2 years ago, and I got in the game at 58 because I've got children and grandchildren. I see the country's been going the wrong way. When I was brought up, my grandfather was an immigrant. On my dad's side, he grew up dirt poor from the Depression days, and they worked hard. They never got rich, but they had a fair shot at the American dream. When I look around, I've made it a bit. Going to college, starting my own business, owning a home. Didn't get rich either, but gave my kids a chance at a better life. That's what we all want to do. But I look around Rockaway and the rest of the district I live in Queens, and there's some neighborhoods that just seem to be dragging behind. It's just not working the way it should for everybody. And what the Democrats have been doing, especially since Biden took over, are making it worse. All the spending they did to help people, what do we get? People not help. We get tons of inflation, so not everyone's hurting. They unleashed this migrant crisis, which is directly undermines people who are homeowners, who are trying to live their American dream in Queens, like the gateway of the American dream. And it also undermines our working class folks who are working paycheck to paycheck, who are day workers, because now they got all these people competing with them and bringing down wages when prices are going up. And the system is it's breaking worse. And I want to be able to, 2 years ago I was like, I know how to fix things. I'm a consultant who looks at systemic problems. You know how people say, oh, the system's broken, it's not fair. Well, they're right, but they don't know what to do about it. They don't really know how to analyze it. It's a big picture. It's not where the fire is, it's what caused the fire. I do that for a living, so I'm like, these are fixable problems. But no one in Washington, especially Gregory Meeks, never even tries to solve them. So I wanted to get in the game for that, and I'm back with more urgency because I think things have gone crazier in the last 2 years. And I won't be able to rest unless I give it a good shot to fix what's wrong and give our children and grandchildren the same American dream we all it's our birthright.
No, well said. You are correct. Unfortunately, letting in all the illegal aliens, migrants, I'm going to call them. I like to call them illegal aliens.
That's what they are.
They are dropping the wage rates, and they're competing against a lot of the folks maybe here in your constituency that are maybe towards the lower end of the economic ladder, unfortunately.
Yes.
So they are bringing it down. We probably would all agree, in Queens, you cannot go to one Home Depot without being solicited by them everywhere. I actually went to the Home Depot, surprisingly, in my area this morning with my wife to buy some light bulbs, and they had an armed guard there, and they're pushing them all out to the street now, which is nice, so I wasn't harassed by 100 laborers. But it's definitely a big problem. Crime is definitely a big problem. Speaking of all the illegals and all the stuff we're paying for, I know your district is just the other side of the Gil Hodges Bridge, where they have the massive Floyd Bennett Field tent city that's a former military base, federal land. Are you guys who are on the other side of that bridge, the Rockaway Peninsula in particular, are they complaining that any of those folks are coming over there bothering, like the stories you hear in the Brooklyn side, down Flatbush Avenue? Are you hearing anything of that, or?
Yes, but not as bad as what's happening in the immediate area in Brooklyn. It's easier to walk up to where there are obviously stores, where if you don't know the area, you see a bridge, it's like, I know there's a beach there, but there's no stores or anything. So people definitely have had incidents in the neighborhoods, but the people in Brooklyn have it much worse.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what are your constituents telling you? What are the main issues they have? Obviously, inflation's killing us all. Slowly, quickly, depending who you are. Crime is terrible. I don't know if you had a chance to look at the Post just a day or two ago, but in Midtown, 3 out of 4 arrests for criminal activity
Yes.
are illegal aliens. And in this area we're at here, Jackson Heights, the Elmhurst area, is the only one lagging behind in terms of illegal criminality. So besides that, the inflation, what else are your constituents, your community telling you, hey, fix this, we have an issue with this? What's the biggest problems?
Okay. Well, as you said, it's very diverse. It's not, it's diverse ethnically, it's diverse financially.
And geographically.
Yeah. So, but, my peninsula is, a microcosm. Breezy Point's different than Bell Harbor and Neponset and Rockaway Park, which is different than the center of the peninsula, and then all the way out in the East End and Far Rockaway. And so you get different ethnic groups, but you also have different financial situations and different priorities. And then when you get on the mainland, as we call it, you've got Guyanese community, the Sikh community, the Bengali community, as well as African Americans who've been here, forever.
So the mainland you're referring to when you get to Cross Bay, over the bridge. Okay.
Yeah, that's
just so anyone who's watching, the mainland would be off the Rockaway Peninsula. You pay a toll, and you wind up on Cross Bay, which eventually becomes Woodhead.
Yeah. Rockaway lingo. We're the peninsula, you're the mainland, and
So we've been called worse.
and if you're coming to the beach, you're a DFD. You're down for the day.
Okay.
Which isn't a bad thing. We all start out as DFDs. A lot of people pretend we're all from Rockaway forever. Most of us came from Brooklyn. Our families came from Brooklyn or Queens. So, so across that diversity, it's definitely inflation that affects everyone. I mean, if you're really well-to-do, maybe you don't care as much, but the other 95% of us are hurting in varying degrees because of that. I mean, the other day I went and bought a bag of groceries on the way home so we'd have breakfast and things. And one bag, $41.20.
Yeah.
Now, I used to work in that store when it was Wallbounds. I'm a cheap, frugal shopper. So a couple of years ago, I was averaging like $25 a bag, which is better than most people. So for me, it's $35 to $40 is ridiculous.
Yeah, you have 4 or 5 bags, $200-something.
And when I was younger and when I was a single parent, it's like I know the decisions you have to make. I used to go to the ends there where they have the sale items. It was like you can get the 5-pack of Kraft macaroni and cheese, the powdered and dry stuff. Like I get 5 of those for $3. I'm like, wow, that's like 5 meals for $3. Or I can get this 1 head of lettuce. Like I want to feed my kids healthy food. And then when the
save money at the same time.
Yeah. Now when the prices go up, it's a lot easier to choose the unhealthy option, not knocking Kraft, than the healthy. Because what are you going to do? Or, credit card debt's up 11% in New York City this year alone.
Oh, yeah.
That's the reason, because people have to make these tough choices, and when they decide, well, I have to at least buy the eggs.
The milk.
Yeah, the milk.
The bread.
Yeah. Now I'm in debt, and now I'm not saving for having a home today, or saving to have your kids go to school, which, that's a brutal cost. People don't want to put their kids in public schools. That is a big issue, again, across, the whole geography here. Less than half the kids reading at grade. In the black community, less than 40% of the kids reading at grade level, 25% at math. What jobs are they going to get in the future? We're not giving them the basic skills. So,
and we're spending more per capita, more per pupil than anybody. And, well, it's...
And that's a great
seems
example.
a little expensive.
And that is kind of, in a way, a great example of how government wastes money and doesn't get results. So we spend, I've been saying, we spend $25,000, $30,000. I'm like, someone said, no, it's $37,000 per pupil. I'm like, that's insane. That's more than going to college. So we spend all this money, and we keep saying, people are like, we're not putting enough money into education. I'm like, are you delusional? Do you actually,
It's a lot of money.
And they're like, okay, let's keep throwing more money at the classroom as if, all right, that's where the fire is. Our kids are failing. Our kids aren't failing because we don't have the right books or the right teachers. Maybe in some cases, the improvements or the technology. It's because their parents weren't set up for success. They've been having trouble since the kids were 2 and 3. So by the time they get to school, the teachers and the parents and the children don't have what they need to succeed. So now you have the fire. You can keep throwing money on the fire, it's just going to burn. Or you can address all the upstream issues. The education system's broken. And so that, again, that's my systems thinking. That's what I do for a living, is fix things by figuring out all the interactions. And but bringing it back to the question, parents are worried about their kids' education. If they think they can afford it, they send them to Catholic school or private school.
Which are very expensive in New York.
And that's coming out of your pocket. So my my daughter's family, my two grandchildren, they just left. They lived with us, and they left about 2 months ago. They moved to South Carolina because
Beautiful state.
Beautiful state, but they're looking into the future. You know, my granddaughter's the older of the two. She's 8. You know, in some years when she has to go to high school, they work for the church. They don't make much money. What are they going to do? You know, they had a rock and a hard place. They had to make the decision to leave New York now. And I don't want our.
Unfortunately, they're not the first or the last. We've seen a lot of our family, friends, coworkers, neighbors. You know, there's an exodus. And it's not like our former Governor Cuomo said everybody's not going to Florida for the beach. And everybody's not going to Florida. They're going to the Carolinas.
Right.
They're going to Texas. They're going to a lot of different other places. But the reason is the city and the state and the country, for us, so mismanaged that you're making it so hard for people working and upper middle class, even middle class people to survive. That they said, hey, the future looks brighter in South Carolina or somewhere else, and they're looking.
Well, and that's why I want to go to Washington and fix things big picture, but we've got to get guys like Tom Sullivan up to Albany to win, because we're doing things wrong at the federal level, the state level, and the city level.
So you need some partners.
Yeah. Well, because it's the state is doing these crazy things that are undermining safety and undermining schools. So that's why people are leaving. As a federal partner, I can help them do the right things, help fund the right things, but if it's Kathy Hochul and the people on the far left in Albany just want to keep doing the same old,
yes.
I can't send the National Guard in to get them to do things right.
We wish you could.
Right.
Unfortunately, as I like to refer to a hapless Hochul, I think she's a tyrant. She's obviously a crook, in my personal opinion. She's mismanaged the state. And as the most powerful person, the most powerful woman right now in the state is the governor. The buck's got to stop with somebody, and the same thing I would say with Sleepy Joe in the White House, and also with Dictator Adams, as I like to refer to him, who's caused this catastrophic climate that we're in here in the 5 boroughs. And it's affecting our neighbors in the counties outside, Westchester and Nassau and Suffolk, and even New Jersey and Connecticut. So it's there's a lot of bad behavior that needs to be changed, a lot of mismanagement. Now, speaking about the kids, you mentioned that the black children are reading about 41% on grade level. You're not the first one who told us that. What are the black constituents, and especially Far Rockaway and these other areas that you're representing, who by default, unfortunately, have been voting for folks like Gregory Meeks and the other Democrats forever, 70, 100 years, and are they waking up saying, hey, what do we have to lose with someone like Paul King, because they're getting the same results from Gregory Meeks and that party?
Oh, good morning. Yes, thank you.
Okay. No, I'm good, thank you. Sure, appreciate it.
Whatever's here is good.
Gracias. So before our coffee came in, what are the African American voters saying anything to you? Like, hey, we're tired of voting for these people in the Democratic Party. We're tired of people like Gregory Meeks, establishment people. We're not seeing change. We're seeing things get worse. And almost like Donald Trump told them a couple of years ago, what do you have to lose? Are they kind of looking at a Paul King and other folks on the GOP side saying, like, hey, what do we have to lose? Let's give this guy a shot, put him in the game, so to speak?
A lot are. When I did this 2 years ago, people didn't know me. And I'm in neighborhoods there where people literally were like, I've never seen a Republican. And I'm walking down the street, and they notice me because I'm some old white guy who doesn't seem to fit in.
You're a real unicorn.
Yeah. So we have good, but and some people are suspicious, and I don't blame them. But if you're, I'm older, so it's easier for me to just push through when people put up a wall.
Sure.
And once you get into conversations, people start realizing, hey, we want the same things. And I would say it was a little more of a push, resilience you had to have in your conversations the last time, and you have to listen. It's critical. This time there's more quick openness to saying, hey, things are getting even worse. So I'm willing to listen and hear what you're saying too, Paul, so maybe we can work together. And it's kind of counterintuitive. People said to me when I ran last time, oh, you should go out to Cambria Heights, you should go out to Laurelton, because there's more middle class. The neighborhoods are kind of like Bell Harbor where you are. Those folks who are more embedded with the system, who maybe get more help from, maybe they make political donations, so maybe they're getting more support.
Sure.
They're not happy with what's going on, but they're still, hey, we're sticking with our guys. Greg Meeks or Donovan Rich, those are our guys.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to give me a real good
Speaking
reason.
of Donovan Rich, I like to refer to him as Do Nothing Donovan because he's allowed our borough, unfortunately, to be the shelter capital and the illegal alien shelter capital, and really don't see the guy. I don't see him do much, so I'm not a big fan of his. He knows that if he's listening. But yeah, there's a lot of problems out there.
He don't like me either.
No. So well, you know,
Because I've been critical of him, and
we don't like you, Donovan. So
I just if you're going to be in office, if I'm going to be in office, people are going to be critical of me, and I'm willing to talk to anyone who's critical of me. But a lot of them are thin-skinned, so he's down. And it's hot and cold when he sees me as a civic leader. I don't take it personally.
No, you can't.
But so those neighborhoods, they've got a tighter connection to the elected officials, and they feel like even if they're not happy, they can maybe work with them more. And in the case of Meeks, he's got the kind of the Floyd Flake infrastructure behind him. So a lot of the churches you go in,
sure.
Like I spoke to a pastor a couple weeks ago. He's like, "You know where you are?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, I'm impressed you're even here." I'm like, "Well, nothing bad's got to happen. We're just talking, Of course, and I just think, but so there's more still in some areas where there's just a tighter connection to the politicians. The resistance, it's changing, but not as quickly. It's in areas that people aren't as well to do. Whether I'm talking, it could be NYCHA, or it could be, South Ozone Park. We have first-time homeowners near Baisley Park. So there's a whole range economically. If they're not as tied in to the political system, where they feel like the politicians have had their back in the past, or they've given money to their church in the past, they're the ones who are saying, "I've been told for decades, I got to vote." Literally, people will be like, "I got to vote because of this." They pinch their skin.
Yeah.
And I need to do what's right for my family, because they're not doing what's right for my family. So that's, I moved the needle a little last time. It's going to move a lot more this time. And it's not because I've got this great message. I do have a great message. It's because they're just tired of the failures.
People are tired of the same broken system we have.
And with the inflation worse, and with the migrant camps, all in, mostly in black neighborhoods, they're like, what's going on? You're all the elected officials are, on our side, but boom, 39.
But they're dumping it in your neighborhoods.
39 in Meeks District. He's got the most of anyone.
Wow, 39.
Yeah. I mean, AOC's got that big tight cluster up in Long Island City. That's like 20.
Sure.
But district-wide, he's got the most at 39.
Wow.
And they're up Sutphin Boulevard. They're in Jamaica
so if anybody in the 5th District is watching, your current leader is Gregory Meeks. That is not a something to be proud of. That's not a trophy you want hanging on your mantle in your office. To have the most shelters, you've surpassed AOC, Mr. Meeks. I mean, it's disgraceful, and it's terrible, to say the least. So if you're listening out there, folks in the 5th District, I don't think Paul is going to try to break that record. I think he's going to try to reduce that record dramatically, correct?
Yes. And it starts, he's bad on both ends. In the streets, they're in our district. He's doing nothing, not bringing any additional resources to make up for the resources we're taking away from our own poor citizens. That's his claim. He's like, I got to bring the money home. He's not bringing the money home to help take care of not so much them, the people who are losing services, but also where are they coming from? They're coming across the broken border. He's an open border Democrat, always has been. He's got like a 0% rating on border security in his career.
Correct.
And when he's lockstep with Biden on everything. And when the Republicans took over the House, first of all, when he and Biden took over, illegal crossings at the border were like Obama, Trump, boom, 2 years, enormous, and stay there. When they stay there, you're either incredibly incompetent, like if you can't even ring them down after 3 years, they're just finally doing stuff because of the election, or it's intentional.
I'm going to go with both, but I think it's tough to say with the Biden administration because they are grossly incompetent, but I would think it's almost what led this city to the decline when we go back to my opinion, de Blasio, who knew better that when you take a bucket with gasoline and throw it on fire, you should run for the bucket of water. So I tend to think it's a little bit of both, but they're very vicious and they're very smart, and unfortunately, all of their programs, policies, by design, are just set to destroy us. Mm-hmm. And they're doing a great job of that.
They're doing a great job of that. But we can never close down these illegal immigrant shelters as long as the border's wide open, as long as we're letting people say asylum like it's like abracadabra and I'm allowed in, and when I want my phone and my money too. And so you gotta, I'm from Rockaway, we know if you got a flood, you gotta stop the water first before you can clean up.
You guys know.
You gotta secure the border, stop the flow, and then we can start bringing down the camps, getting people. Listen, people came here. They're desperate. They're not all criminals, though some of them are turning to crime, as we've been reading about.
Many, unfortunately.
Yeah, many are. But they still came here illegally. They still knew, oh, you say XYZ to get in, even though they don't really have a claim of asylum. So eventually, they're going to go. But you get.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that. So your election, that would put you as a congressman, you'd be part of the federal government.
Right.
So obviously you can't do anything alone. You'd have to have a coalition, or you'd have to have a supermajority. You know, whether you're in the Senate, House, I get how that works. But what can you do as an individual to drum up support with not only Republicans, but maybe you can get some folks on the other side of the aisle to basically say, hey, these people need to go. They've got to get deported. Obviously, the ones who are raping and molesting our children and beating up 85-year-old grandmothers, those should be the first ones to go. If they're bold enough to shoot at the cops, I always say, what would they do to us?
Right.
So how would you, as Paul King, let's say tomorrow you win the election, hypothetically, you get to your chair over there in Washington, how do you go about getting a coalition to at least start getting rid of the dangerous ones first? And you know, like Trump did say, it'll be a mass deportation, but we don't expect them all to just raise their hand and say, hey, I'll take a first flight out of here. So obviously it's going to be tough. Some of them will give up, and we can make conditions harsh on them to want to go back and take a free flight. But most of them are going to try to stay here, especially the bad ones who are here to sell drugs and commit crimes. So how would you as an individual start the process to get rid of the worst of the worst first? And then we can worry about the rest of them who should all be deported as well.
Well, there's a ton underneath that, really. You know, and this is why it's so important to hang on to the House majority and to win the Senate, which most are both likely, because you know, we need both sides of Congress in order to really get legislation passed. And obviously, if it's President Trump versus President Harris, he's going to do something about it, where she's going to just keep on the same policy, and that'll be a nightmare. You know, so if I'm a congressman and I'm having to deal with her, I'll do my best I can. But she's going to want to do the wrong thing, so we'll have to spend all our time stopping her from making things worse as opposed to making things better. I mean, when I look at people who commit crimes of any sort, you know, sometimes you kind of go with the folksy analogies. Listen, someone comes in your house, and for whatever reason, you invite them to stay. You know, you're like, oh, I feel bad for you. And all of a sudden, they're either stealing stuff or breaking stuff. You're like, or, you know, take a dump in your living room. Like, all right, it's time to go.
Leave, yeah.
You know, so we just had someone. I mean, it's not the biggest crime in the world, but there's a bunch of Ecuadorians that come down in a minivan. They were doing this in Rockaway. Everyone's on the beach, so now it's a good time to grab people's bikes and pretend they're camping out on a beach block, and they look around, they grab some stuff, throw it in the van, and go. So, got busted.
2 hours later, they're out.
Yeah, so it's just like any other criminal in New York. So that's bad enough that the DA they got in trouble, and then they're out on a desk appearance ticket.
You need partners locally with that, because you're at the federal level,
right.
So you need city partners. Unfortunately, the city council, most of them are radicals, far extremists that hate America and they hate our way. Most of them, unfortunately, is very sad. So it's a whole thing where a lot of seats have to flip. Where you mentioned someone like Thomas Sullivan would be a great partner for you as a assembly in Albany, but what do you do with the city council when they're all like, let's just defund the police, let's defund let's erase everybody, open border, no crime, no nothing. And one of them, I think, said the other day, no courts anymore.
Right.
So what do we do in that Mickey Mouse situation?
Well, just finish this counting out. That person shouldn't. It's bad enough that guy's just back on the street like any other criminal in New York. He's not an American citizen. He came across the illegal from Ecuador. Goodbye. You go. It's like you go directly to jail. You go directly to Ecuador. You don't pass go. You don't get $200. That should be our policy nationally. And I think if that means putting pressure from the federal government on states like New York, you want to be a sanctuary state?
No funding.
Yeah.
Or force them to cooperate with ICE so we can get these guys out of here.
Right. And really put people to shame. I think that one of the things you can do, when you've got the seat, is use the bully pulpit. So a guy like Meeks has been in Washington forever, never comes back to the district. He says to me, he said when a Queens Chronicle interview 2 years ago, basically implying, I don't understand the job, because the job is to be in Washington making deals behind closed doors. Which, by the way, long story short, he's only passed one bill in 26 years, where he's the sponsor. I mean, you throw out all the commemorative stuff and whatever, one bill in 26 years.
Minus all the fluff, the bells and whistles, he's only passed one. So if you're out there and you're going to have a chance in the 5th District, and you got a chance between an establishment, Mr. Meeks, and you have someone here like Paul King, and the man's been there for a long time, career politician. He's passed one bill that he's sponsored or pushed, sponsor all the fluff aside. So if you're voting there, how can you even contemplate voting for this guy? I personally, if I was in that constituency, I would say, what the hell do we have to lose? Get Paul King in there, and maybe he'll do 2 bills, and he's still winning. I mean, one better is, but on a serious note, if you're out there, you guys have to make a conscious decision. Nobody can be happy the way things are going, and I think we all need a change here. So I would say, they'd be crazy not to give you a chance. What do they have to lose? I mean, you can't be worse than Gregory Meeks, all jokes aside.
No. And yeah, I think it's low risk, high reward, and I tell people, listen, if I can't follow through, or if I'm full of it, I'm telling you one thing, and I get to Washington, and I'm like everybody else. 2 years from now, just fire me.
You're in a short election every 2 years for Congress.
And I'm not looking for a career. I'm 60 years old. I'm not. I don't want to be here 26 years.
So you're not looking to be a Mitch McConnell, for the record.
No. And I don't want to spend 10 years doing what I'm told so that I can get a chairmanship or win points. I'm here to fix things, and then do a couple of terms, get it right, hand the keys to the next generation. So I'm not there. I'm not going to be someone who falls in line. I'm going to be busting ass all the time.
So you heard it right from the man's mouth. He wants to be there for a few terms. He's 60 years old. He's not trying to stay there until he dies or in his 90s and 80s, like unfortunately many of our elected officials do. So he's looking to get in there, make some positive changes, and like you said, hand the baton off to the next generation or somebody else, which is admirable because most people, unfortunately, don't say what you're saying, and they want to stay there forever and be a Pelosi or a McConnell. And quite frankly, whether it's local, state, or federal, we've had enough of those guys. That's why we're in a big part of why we're in this mess, because of people like those.
Yeah. And, growing up, I didn't believe in term limits for most of my life. I'm like, we have an election, that's our term limits, that's our power. But when public satisfaction with Congress is 15%, give or take, and
if you even believe it's that high,
the re-election rate's 95%, something's wrong. And the thing is, they all have so much money, and they've got, Meeks has $2 million a year coming in all the time. He just keeps spending money to promote himself.
Special interest, lobbyists.
The vast majority of it's from special interest. So, he takes care of those people, they take care of him. And then, he does, they all do this. It's a con of Congress. It's like, Grace Meng brought $13 million back to the district. Gregory Meeks $15 million, and here are all the churches and little things. So you get to see in the paper, there's a press release in March, and now this time of the year you'll see like diagrams in the papers they put out saying, we've taken your money, or your children's money, really, because they borrowed it from from people who aren't even born yet, and now we're giving it back to you in this form. And it's a pittance compared to the trillions that they're crushing, they're destroying the government with. But that's the advantage of incumbency.
And it usually comes on one of those glossy photo cards. Towards like towards election time. Yeah.
Yeah, and a guy like me is lucky I can put anything in the mail, and they're like, probably on taxpayer dime. I get 8 of them. They're mailing to people who died in my house 30 years ago. They're even updating the list. But who cares? It's your money. It's not their money. It's taxpayer money.
That's a great point, Paul. Because one thing that personally really irked me, and for those of us here in New York City, I'm sure I'm not the only one. When I used to go out in my community or somebody else's and see a trash can and say, brought to you by council person so-and-so, and I was like, that's all money.
Right.
You're doing your job. You put how much are we paying for those signs that said councilwoman, councilman, so-and-so? So that's something that I have a problem with. You're doing your job, now you get a pat on the back, and you have to make a sign and put it on the trash can, for God's sake. I mean, it's just crazy. It's ludicrous. Yeah. But you're not taking money from the big special interest. Where are most of your donations coming? Is it working people in the peninsula, in the surrounding communities? Let the folks know, because you're not taking in $2 million from special interests like Mr. Meeks. So how do you get your grassroots funding going? And who's donating to you? What type of people?
I'd say almost 100% of my money's local. By local, I mean here in New York. I've got no businesses, no PACs, none of that going on.
Okay.
I've done some mailings outside the district to people who I know care about inflation or care about Israel or care
Sure.
about different policy matters.
So just for the record, George Soros and his son aren't sending you $1 billion checks.
Now, I was hanging out with them in the Hamptons the other. No. Yeah, so we run a couple of fundraisers in Rockaway. We're going to have a fundraiser on September 23rd. Andrew Giuliani's going to come and headline it for us.
Tell the viewers, if you will, where will it be, who's going to be there, and how can they get involved and attend and donate?
So it's going to be September 23rd. It's a Monday at Davino's Restaurant in Howard Beach.
Nice place.
Get my help from the Howard Beach, the Ronald Reagan Republican Club of Howard Beach, Councilwoman Ariola's district. So I'll get support there. Tom Sullivan and Michael Riley will be there. If they could pick up some support too, that's great because we have to win as a team, like top to bottom.
Sure.
And Andrew Giuliani's great. He's been a good supporter for years, and a guy who supports our local Republican club too. He's not even running for he's not.
But he's all over the place, though.
Yeah, he's trying to help. And,
Sure.
And he's got a great message about family, so I'm proud to have his support, and I think he's a good draw, too. Let's face it, I need the money. So the more people he brings in, I would say it's like booking a band. Some people want to hear what I have to say, but, you get a really good band, cover band, but no, if you get Andrew Giuliani, he'll bring in a good group, and that's going to fuel this messaging at the end, because we've got to get the message out into the community. And speaking of a message, not quite hot off the presses. This isn't the actual draft, so it's actually got mistake in it. Next week, announcing a couple of days, contract with Southeast Queens.
Okay.
Here are the 5 promises I'm making that touch on the concerns of people throughout Queens or my district.
If you could, Paul, tell us what they are, and before you do that, because they might not be able to view this paper from the screen.
Right.
Where can they find this? Is this on your website, or where can they see your 5 promises?
Yes, it'll be on my website. I'll try to put a pop-up to make it easy, because it's my website is king2024.us.
King2024.us.
Right, and I'll get it up on the front page, or I'll get a pop-up so people can get to it, because I'm sure it's contract with SE Queens, but
Sure. All right, so
URLs get kind of long, so
no, that's great. So this is perfect, and we didn't know he was going to bring his contract with Southeast Queens, which is a pleasant surprise.
Right.
So if you would, now that we know where to find it, and you'll be sharing some information, and you have a fundraiser coming up with the younger Giuliani, which is exciting, at a nice restaurant in Howard Beach. What are the 5 promises here, if you could share with our viewers, that Paul King is putting forth with his name on it? That here's my promise to my constituency I'm looking to win.
Okay. Well, number one is Americans over illegal immigrants. I want to make sure we're distinguishing illegal versus legal, because the Democrats always say you're against immigration.
No.
You know who's not fooled by that? Legal immigrants. You go into the Hispanic community,
Tell that to my wife.
community.
Yeah, you can tell it to my wife.
Yeah, they're all like, that's bull. These people are cutting the head of the line. I'm good, thank you. And but it's not just that we've got these camps that are bad for our neighborhoods. It's not just that these people are
costing our grandchildren a fortune.
Right. Yes.
Our grandchildren we haven't had yet, even.
And it's taking services away from people who are hurting, and that's one of the biggest themes I hear when I go around in Queens. And it's like, for years they're telling me, we don't have money for this program. We don't have money for
Our veterans, our kids.
for our veterans. These are people who are hurting.
Our disabled people.
This is the best we can do. But all of a sudden, we can roll out the red carpet for people who are here illegally. They're not citizens. They
5-star hotels, debit cards, transportation, medical, educate. Where's it stop?
Yeah.
And our veterans are sleeping on the subways.
So yeah, it's spending our money there. We need to spend our money on citizens, New Yorkers, who are hurting first.
All right.
And so that's number 1. Number 2, we've talked about reducing the cost of living. That's huge, for everyone. And at the federal level, I mean, it's hard to undo damage in an economy. It's not like you throw the switch and the president says, "Oh, prices are going down," even though Kamala Harris thinks she can have price controls. Apparently, she's never read a book on economics, nor even lived through, all the failures. Even Richard Nixon, a Republican, he tried that when I was a boy.
But it's not going to work in a capitalist society.
Right. I mean, if you know anything, which you would hope you'd know if you're going to be president of the United States, that's ludicrous. But what you can do,
like communism. It sounds like communism.
Yeah, and that always works out great. It always leads to a gun. That's the only way to enforce it.
Yep.
And that's straight from Mao. So.
Yeah.
But what you can do at the federal level is first stop the ridiculous spending. When you print money and spend it on things that are of no value, to buy votes today, all you do is devalue the dollars in your citizens' pockets. That's why my bag of groceries cost $41 the other day.
Yeah.
No,
you're not kidding.
And so we can stop that, because even when Biden came into office, like the American Rescue Plan, so much of that was just political payoffs. We were already on the road to recovery. He needed to stabilize, do something smart.
We all know he didn't stabilize anything.
No, he spent money from our great grandchildren's money. People,
Our great grandchildren. Yeah.
Enormous debt. The debt line's now off. The ceiling is not coming back down, and. It devalues the dollar, but some of that money's not even spent. It was emergency spending, but it's like he was a 5-year plan of, like a communist, a 5-year plan of spending money. Yeah. We got to bring that money back and start helping the value of our dollars come back up by stopping the reckless spending. And the other thing that will have an immediate impact is bringing down the cost of energy. We all know,
baby, drill.
The cost of energy brings up the cost of everything. That the coffee beans that made this coffee, they didn't fly here. They were beamed here by the enterprise. They were some truck had to deliver them here, and it drives up the price of everything. And then it's going to be a tough winter for home heating, and so it was the electricity.
It was a tough
price.
one last year.
The electricity prices since Biden jumped because his bogus approach to green energy. That's also killing.
Oh, you mean the Green New Sham?
The Green New Sham, the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah.
And you look at the chart of the prices tend to go higher. There's this bump, and it's because of his policies. And it was a hot summer. I'm sure everyone's bills. You had the air conditioner going,
and then I'll be the first one to admit it. Mine went up.
Yeah. And that's just, that's money you spend. You don't even realize you're spending it. Now, again, you've got less money for food. This is why credit card debt's up. So we could do things. We need to aggressively bring that down because that helps everyone. And if we have more money, then we're spending more money on the things we need. We're saving for our families. That rises the economy up.
All right, so far Americans over illegal aliens, I'm sold. And making America and New York affordable again. I'm for that. So please tell us number 3, 4, and 5, Paul.
Well, the second one links right into the third one links right to the second one, which is everyone's American dream. It's supposed to be the land of opportunity for everyone. Fixing the economy helps us move in that direction. But again, I'm an analyst. I look at the building blocks of the American dream. Education, we talk about how that's broken. There's not a lot of access to jobs, and the economy. We don't run the economy from the government to promote jobs. Also, access to capital can be really difficult. If you start your own business, I have a funny story. Let's share another time about when I got my business started, trying to get a loan from Chase, and own a home. I mean, these things are all broken, and I know how to fix them. And when you look around Queens, a lot of us. Yeah, it's a mess.
It's a mess.
And some neighborhoods or some people are managing to get ahead. Some people are stuck in neutral for generations. The system's broken. It's not like someone saying, we're going to hold these people down. It's because we've got bad policies that are holding these people down. And it's the Gregory Meekses and the Donovan Richards, and the people who have been there for years representing these neighborhoods.
Well, you're 100% right. And just as an example to our viewers, let's just look at the area of Far Rockaway.
Right.
Very tough, dangerous area, a lot of crime, a lot of violence, and this same party and these same people have been leading them for generations and generations. How are those people better off there? Probably worse off today with inflation and the illegals taking their jobs and crime and all that. So something to think about, and it's across the city. If you look at Baltimore, parts of Jersey, New York, California, Detroit, so on and so on, these are places that are 70, 100 years Democratic strongholds, and things only get worse. So it's something that our viewers and folks around the country need to really start paying attention to. It's like when you have a coach. We have a great baseball team here, the Yankees, but Joe Torre didn't do so well for a little while after, if you guys remember, not too long ago. And what happened? He was fired.
Right.
So you have to equate our leaders here in the political spectrum as being coaches, if you will, and when they're messing things up, like they've destroyed this country, economy, and city, somebody's got to get fired.
Well, Far Rockaway.
And new people have to come in like you.
Far Rockaway is a great example. For years they've always had it harder than on the other parts of the peninsula. In fact, when Meeks was the assemblyman, I think unemployment was 14% in Far Rock. I remember my dad was specifically like, "Listen, we need to do X, Y, and Z."
14%.
Yeah, I mean, it's going back to the 90s, but
Still, yeah.
so they've always suffered higher unemployment, more problems with gangs, drugs, and not good schools. And I'm on the community board, the education review. We're like, can we get some specialized schools? Can we get some honor classes down there? There are kids who have potential, and we're not giving them a chance. And yeah, the people in power haven't been bringing that along. But it's even worse in a sense because there are good families down there that have been struggling to get ahead in a tougher environment.
They're trying.
And like so Edgemere is part of that whole Far Rockaway area.
Rough area also.
People there bought homes, and the city was like, oh, and it's mostly African Americans. It's like,
Yeah.
listen, we're going to bring in schools, we're going to bring in some shopping. This is going to be a great neighborhood. It's going to be like in 1 and 2 family houses, like some of the other neighborhoods. Well, what did they do? They didn't bring any of those services. There's no bank anywhere near there. There's no stores. What they did is they let developers build bigger buildings right around them.
So is that City of Yes?
It's going to get so much worse. If they're already doing this to Far Rock, forget about it with City of Yes. And it's really so where a hospital used to be. There's like 25-story buildings going up, the biggest we'll ever see.
Speaking of the hospital, you guys on the peninsula as a whole don't have a full-fledged hospital that handles. Because we talk about this with Thomas Sullivan.
Right.
When that officer was killed recently, unfortunately, they had to drive him to Jamaica.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have a full-fledged trauma center there. So you guys have a lot of issues as a whole on the peninsula. Some areas have more issues than others, but you guys don't even have a full star, a 4 or 5-star hospital, whatever they call it, that can do full trauma.
No, we lost Peninsula Hospital, which was closer to where I live, and
Sure.
Not that it was a top-notch hospital necessarily by the ratings.
Sure.
It's tough to have an inner-city hospital, especially in New York, because you got these big-name hospitals in Manhattan. So it's like you're bleeding, you go to Peninsula, you go to St. John's. As soon as the bleeding stops, it's like you need an operation. Oh, get me to Manhattan. Now that I'm stabilized, all the money then goes to the hospitals in Manhattan, and they're, it's tougher on them. So but Peninsula had a helipad though. So if you were a drowning victim, we can get you to Peninsula, stabilize you, boom, get you to Jamaica. Now you have to drive. I mean, driving anywhere in this town is ridiculous, especially with the bike lanes, the reduced speeds. I mean,
the potholes.
Listen, all right, and listen, the cops threw their brother into a car to race them there, and and I'm sure they had the path clear as much, but his life was over.
Still they make it, yeah.
Before they left the peninsula, he had no shot. They're trying to get a trauma center. I'll give the councilwoman, Brooks Powers, she had a task force going. I'm usually skeptical of task forces because a lot of the people I know in Albany who are representatives, they throw a task force together and they talk, but they don't really do anything. They're just appeasing the citizens. They did get
Lip
money
service.
Yeah, exactly. They got money allocated to something, so we'll see what happens. But it's tough because it's expensive. You need to have all the specialists on call all the time and all the equipment, and some bean counter somewhere will say, well, there's not enough people who live in Rockaway.
But just so the viewers know, you actually have experience saving the government money through your consulting work. So
Right.
I don't know if a lot of people know that about you, but
No.
Paul, if you look up his life prior to running in politics, he actually has saved, I don't think it was billions I read.
Billions.
That you've saved state and local government, if I read correctly?
Yes.
So the fact that he's done that for the state and the local government, and I mean, I would say you'd be able to replicate that if you can win this seat and do it at the federal level and save us all some pennies, please.
I would love to, and I think if both Donald Trump and I are there, two guys from Queens, and my win's going to be a big win, so I'm going to be a star for a little while. I can bring him these ideas and say, listen, we can change the world together. Two guys from Queens, and but there's so much waste. And, people always talk about waste and inefficiency. It's not that hard to find if you're looking for it, and you have the skills. So we can, and that waste is money that doesn't help our kids. It doesn't help solve the healthcare problem, and it comes out of our pocket. So that means it comes out of the economy. So now you've got less money to buy a car. So there's less cars. So I know the whole trickle down thing is, people use it to in a negative sense, but.
Sure.
The truth is, if we have more of our own money and we're able to spend it, then we're essentially helping build other products, and those are jobs we're creating by spending our money on things we want instead of wasting money.
So you're going to plug some holes for us.
Yeah, and if the government was spending really trillions less, and forget about healthcare, there's so much there that is, it's not going to get solved in my lifetime. But I look at it and I'm just, it's painful as someone who does in my line of work. And we do really good work in my business with healthcare, but it's like,
No,
one,
I've read a lot of great stories about you that, I saw saved billions. I said,
Yeah.
well, if he could do it at the state and the local level, why couldn't he do it at the federal level, which is just as, if not more important these days?
And just to be clear, when we save billions, we also, at the same time, make the people there more efficient so they can serve more citizens. So service levels go up and the costs come down. And we always go in with people, it's like, listen, we're not here to help you downsize, because when you just cut and you don't know what you're doing, you make everything worse.
Sure.
And then later on, someone has to spend way more money to fix it.
Rebuild it, rehire.
Yeah. So, so we help them give citizens better services for less money.
All right. Let's finish the 5 talking points you had here, and then we'll move on to something else.
Okay. The last 2 were protecting parents' rights and bringing back safe streets. We certainly talked about crime. I think
Sure.
what you could do, you definitely need local partners, but what you can do from the federal level is we need resources for big cities to hire more police officers, hire and train more police officers, because we've gone from 40,000 to 30,000 roughly in New York City, and maybe we don't need to be 40, but we need more men and women in blue on the street.
More than 30.
Yeah. And just in the 90s, the federal government helped with that. It's time to do that again, because we've got to rebuild. Because Kamala Harris is like, oh, having police there doesn't stop crime. I mean, again, I don't know what world she lives in, but if there's consequences, if there's guardians,
Well, that's a consequence,
guardrails.
yes. Maybe necessarily, honestly, you probably touched on a very important topic, because if you see the post, they're flipping the bird or they're laughing at that, we're talking about these criminals, mostly the illegal ones these days.
Right.
And they're laughing because they know they're going to go out and rob X amount from Macy's or the pharmacy, and they'll be back out. What are they giving? Condoms, Mets tickets, and a Metro card?
Yeah.
So, they're on a subway map, so, they'll be out. So it is something, yes, I understand that, if the police are there and they're just going to throw the cuffs on you out in 2 hours, these guys who are hardened criminals, not going to be too scary, but if they put the cuffs on me, they're going to be stuck with bail maybe, and be sent to Rikers Island or worse. Maybe the consequences would be what's missing now, and everybody almost feels like you can murder, rape, and pillage, touch children, and these judges are just crazy. They just let everybody out.
Yeah, it's unfortunately it's a part of human nature. We want to choose right over wrong, but when wrong just seems like free or everyone's doing, it's like the bus is a great example. Start with that.
Oh my God, 50% of the riders aren't paying.
Right, like why well, I'd be an idiot to pay if no one else is paying.
But isn't that crazy though?
But
50%?
Oh, it's insane. And then the cost, and but that just goes right into any other crime to a degree. Not that person who's stealing the fare is going to
So is
commit
that
robbery,
the broken windows type thing?
Yeah, well, but it's also, it's just, again, the same kind of human nature thing. It's like, if I'm with other people who are committing crimes, it's just most of us, then, well, heck, if he's getting away with going into the store and grabbing $1,000,
why not me?
Why not me? I'm a fool if I don't do it.
Yeah.
But that's what our government has set up for us. And, so bringing back safe streets, the parental rights is huge. I think it's crazy what's going on in Albany, with they tried to pass some bills where it was like, oh, we can have medical procedures on your children without your permission.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up. We did a meeting here in Queens recently with Jonathan Rinaldi about the city of Yes, and that came up. And how the school staff or the teachers aren't going to notify you when you have a minor under 18 years old that's going to do some type of medical or some kind of sexual procedure. What kind of society do we live in?
Yeah.
And I said this last time, and I'll say it again. So if you're a parent or a grandparent or a guardian, and you have a child under 18 like I do, or anybody with common sense, how would that be acceptable in society for anybody? And I'm not picking on teachers or the Board of Ed, but how would that be acceptable for anybody, doctors, anybody, police, fire department, to allow a minor to do some kind of procedure and not notify the parents for consent? It's just seems like they're trying to take our control of our own kids away from us.
Yeah.
And for nefarious reasons.
It makes my blood boil. I mean, if you're a parent, I'm sure you feel the same way. You died literally for your children. And the idea that someone can make these life-altering decisions when they're teenagers,
Well, even less because it says under 18.
Right.
So what's to stop some 5 or 6 or 10-year-old kid from saying, hey, I want to do this and this, and by the way, don't tell my parents.
Right.
And we'll rubber stamp it, do it. It's just crazy.
Yeah, I think there are people who, they don't want there to be morality in our country, and that comes from, we get it, whether we get it from our churches, our mosques, our synagogues, our traditions. The whole good versus evil is kind of part of America. We're really going back to the founding documents, and it's part of who we are as a people. But the progressives don't want any of that. They've been pushing God and morality out forever. Now they want to codify it in New York State, which is pretty much your kids are our kids now. We're gonna change the future by, doing what we want. Anything goes, and good people have to stand up against that. That's why this Prop 1 needs to go down in flames.
Oh, I agree.
And it's so cleverly worded. I mean, basically, it's like, no, vote yes if you're against discrimination, but vote no if you're a discriminator.
Yeah.
People don't understand what's under the hood, so we've got to get people to know what's really going on behind the scenes and shoot that down, which is obviously a state issue. But I feel passionately about it.
Well, maybe if we had a federal law, we could nip that in the bud. Because speaking of, you'd be actually Congress to have federal authority. What do we do in particular to higher education? I know it starts, unfortunately, even elementary and up, but what do we do with the indoctrination of our young people who are told, be anti-American, we're an evil country, we're oppressors, we're horrible, no to capitalism, no to democracy? How do we, I know obviously it's an ideological thing where parents have to sit down and we have to get these radical, crazy professors, if you don't want to call them that, and CUNY, and we've seen the one that put the knife to the machete to the reporter's throat recently, and so on and so on. But is there something we can do besides fighting the moral war? Is there something that can be done maybe at the federal level and say, hey, if you're going to say, bad things about the country and indoctrinate our kids, you're losing your funding, you're fired. Like, can we? I know it's an uphill battle, but is there something that could be done at the federal level? Potentially.
Potentially, it's tough because we don't want to impinge on or restrict people's First Amendment rights. Not that, but I don't think that's the role of the professor to be like, I'm going to indoctrinate you.
Yeah.
But I do think we need to. It's starting to come to light what's going on. I mean, the biggest thing we can do as parents is just teach our kids good values, because they'll go to school, they'll learn some crazy ass stuff,
and come back home and say, well, my crazy teacher said this, and we'll have to sit as a parent and say, no, honey, let me explain to you. And
one of my daughters went to St. Louis University, which is a Jesuit school. She went to be in service, do service to the community and the world, which is great. And I was surprised even during orientation at what I was hearing. And, within a year or so, her lingo was changing to the point where it was making my wife really agitated. I'm like, and it was, stuff that essentially was, I must be a bad guy because, but I'm like, listen, just let it play out. She's a smart girl, and it was harder for my wife to go through it than
I could
for
imagine,
me.
sure.
But she's got the same values. She's still out there doing service, and she still sees. But she's back to seeing the world the way she would have seen it. So as long as we're teaching our kids right from wrong and really being strong parents, and that's what we have to support in the country: support parents, support families. Don't let New York State do crap like this, because they're trying to eliminate the parent. Once you do that, then we're dead. It's kind of like Reagan said, if we're, once we stop being one nation under God, we're going to be one nation gone under. Once we,
he was a master of quotes.
Once we stop teaching our kids right from wrong and what's moral, once we stop aspiring to be something better, then the next generation is going down, and the whole country is going down.
And he also said if socialism was to come rear its head in America, it would come in the form of liberalism.
Yeah.
So amongst his other one-liners. But yeah, it was a brilliant man, great president.
So we've got to, this isn't federal policy so much as we've just got to support parents to be good parents. We got to give them more. I support choice in education, because we don't want our kids trapped in these family schools.
So you're for charter schools?
And I don't think they're like a panacea, because some of the charter schools will fail and they'll be bad. But I'm more for competition.
We see some great success stories about a lot of them.
True. We need more competition. As long as the national teachers unions and people like Randy Weingarten essentially have a monopoly on education, they're going to continue to try to take parents out of the equation.
To be fair, they have a monopoly on a lot of our elected officials.
That's true.
They yield a lot of money where they dole out a lot of money to people, and money buys loyalty.
They get a lot of loyalty on the for the Greg Meeks and the Democrats, that's for sure.
And Randy cuts a lot of checks.
Yeah. So but we can't have parents eliminated from the equation. We have to give them more options so their kids aren't trapped in failing schools or trapped in indoctrination schools. And competition and innovation will bring the education system back around. That's what we should be driving. We could drive that from Washington.
Sure. Now, I had a question for you. So we're in terms, we usually seem to be a very hopeful nation. And you remember, going back to Reagan, our better days are on the horizon. Always positive, our better days are in the future. Do you feel that a lot of people that you're speaking to in your district feel that way, or do a lot of people feel like, our better days are behind us? We're too far gone we've turned that turn. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to make that U-turn. Like, what are your constituents throughout the peninsula and the surrounding areas that you'd be representing? Do you feel they're optimism, or is it pessimism, or a mixture?
A mixture. I talked to Dwayne Moore a lot, running for Assembly District 29.
Sure, we know Dwayne.
Okay, so, he sees all the problems in his community, but he talks about his generation being the first that's going to have worse off than the previous generation. And, we were actually talking about that at the end of the Carter years. So when I was, still a teenager, it was like, then, and when Reagan was coming up, it was like, if things don't turn around now, my generation was going to be the first that was worse than the previous, and it got turned around. So I still have, that's what I grew up on that optimism, and I'm the sort of person who, I'm a baseball player and coach. I could be down 9 runs in the 8th inning and be like, all right, there's still a way to do this. I don't think it's that bad, and I've seen the country go through what I think are worse times. It's just these are different. These are bad in a weirder way. Different problems and attack at like the fundamentals of who we are, of morality and character.
Okay.
But I think there's way more good Americans out there, and they just you got to stand up. You can't wait. Don't wait till we bottom out. So I was saying to people 2 years ago,
now.
I was like, I'm in it now because I see us bottoming out. And we don't want to have to go through that. It's painful, and it affects millions in a really negative way. Let's get up there now, and do what you can now, and if it's just voting, getting your neighbors to vote, making phone calls, write a check, but your voice has to be heard, because if you have the whole silent majority, if you're silent, you're not doing it. It's not helping. It's not, you're complicit with the ship going down.
No, listen, well said, and obviously, I don't think anyone put a gun to your head and made you get in the race. So you're doing it, I think, for the right reasons, trying to fix the peninsula and the surrounding areas where you live, and for your fellow citizens. And that's commendable. Let's change the subject if we may. We've been hearing for administration after administration in modern times, decades for now, that we're being infiltrated by the communist Chinese, and we've seen in more recent times the late Dianne Feinstein, who had a spy driving her around, was listening in a conversation in her back seat. We know there was one that just came up where top aide to the last governor, Mr. Cuomo, now to hapless Hochul, and she was also a top aide that, if I read the post correctly, Grace Meng had introduced to the Cuomo administration. Her and her husband were just indicted, went to court. Looks like they've taken tremendous amount of money, Ferraris, $4 million mansions. How bad is the espionage and the infiltration in our country, in your personal opinion?
Okay.
And what do we do to stop this? During the World War II days, there was a couple that we hung for spying. Do we go back to that capital punishment? What can we do? Because obviously, as Sleepy Joe said, yes, they are going to eat our lunch. He said they're not coming for your lunch. They are trying to knock us off the pedestal. So what would be something you could do if you got into Congress tomorrow to maybe not stop it 100%, but alleviate it?
Well, let me, first of all, it's huge. I'm glad you raised it. It's hugely important, and I don't think people realize how bad it is.
We are asleep at the wheel on this one, as a nation.
I just wanted to say one more thing on the last kind of why I'm running. Because you talked in the beginning about how diverse my district is. Rockaway is diverse in its own way, but it's also very segregated because it's, in chunks, because it's a narrow peninsula. And I've always talked to people there as a community leader. It's like, we're all in this together. It's one Rockaway. When Mother Nature comes to us, she comes to all of us. She doesn't care what zip code you're in.
So when Sandy came, you guys united, and this shouldn't be any different.
But most of your life, you're so busy with your job, your family, you're not going over to that neighborhood 2 miles away. And I'm like, I can't, that's why I joined the community board. I know the community doesn't really have any authority here whatsoever. I can't say, hey, we're all in this together if I'm not walking those other neighborhoods and with my friends there. Or, saying they're my friends, but being with them. And that goes for the rest of Queens, the people in the Guyanese community and the Bengali community. I believe the American principles are supposed to work for all of us, and I want to live that. Because if it doesn't work for all of us, then it's really not working. That's also why I want to fix these things, to prove the point that this is real. What we've been doing for 250 years, People want to tear it down. It's real. Let's just fix it instead of tearing it down. Like, the revolutionaries want to burn things, and then what?
Yeah.
It's been a great force for good in the world for all our mistakes in over 250 years, and we got to keep it going. So
I agree.
And the Chinese don't want us to keep it going. Good transition
No.
point. And they are fighting a long-term war. If
Yes.
someone says to me, every so often, someone gets panicked, it's like, oh, we're in the verge of World War III. China's going to do X, Y, Z. I'm like, the Chinese aren't going to do that. That's stupid. They're not going to start dropping bombs and have a war. They're going to win long term because they're already working on it. They're, what they're doing throughout the Southeast Asia with, militarily, but also spreading their influence in Africa, where they're kind of doing what the colonials used to do, a different flavor of it. But when we help a country in Africa, we will loan them money, and we maybe we'll get to set up a base. We just got kicked out of Nigeria. Great job.
Yeah,
but
terrible.
The Chinese set the terms that if you can't pay them back, all of a sudden they own that port. It's that kind of thing. Or
It's almost like a loan shark with the mafia.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great analogy.
They find desperate people, desperate nations. And not to cut you off, but there was one story I read, and forgive me, I don't remember the country, but it was one country that beat them at their own game.
Okay.
But everybody else seems to be under their boots, so to speak. Oh, we'll build your bridge, we'll build your school.
Right.
But it's going to come at a huge price. You're going to lose your minerals, your oil, your fishing, whatever, because we all know that they're hungry for resources.
Yeah.
So Africa, unfortunately, is a poor continent overall, but they have an abundance of different resources, and the Chinese want them and need them. And that's, unfortunately, why they're there in a colonial type, facet, if you will.
Yeah, and the mafia analogy is great, and Africa is rich in so many things, but really in critical elements for the future technologies. So all globally, China is competing at that level, and some of it's honest competition in a sense, but the way they do it is despicable. But what they're doing in our country is, they're sending people here to be students and to learn here, and they also spend money like they're not the only foreign country that spends a lot of money in universities to spread their influence.
We know here in New York City, we don't have to name them, they're all ripe with Chinese donations.
Right.
Big money too.
And then they've got these organizations that are an extension of the Chinese Communist Party. That
You mean the secret police stations we found in New York City just 6 months ago?
Yeah. But kind of more subtle and nefarious is, I forget the names of the organizations. It's something that Mao set up and had gone the way of all things, but Xi brought back, where it's like they have people here, it's like some nice cooperation kind of name, but they're watching all the Chinese Americans. And if you come over
Intimidating them?
Yeah.
Well, the dissidents anyway, they're intimidating them.
Yeah, if they want to know. They had just someone who infiltrated aid. He survived Tiananmen Square, and then he became essentially a spy. So he's like, he checking on all the Chinese Americans who might be saying the wrong thing, or the kids who come here to go to school here. If they start learning things about America, they're like, and say, well, my country's wrong about that.
Yeah.
Well, mom and dad are getting a knock on the door back in Beijing.
Mom and dad are disappearing.
And but the same organization's also doing what we just saw in Albany. It's been going on for 10 years. They're spending money. They're trying to influence state and local. They're not even doing federal. They are. This is long-term thinking. They're undermining long-term American policy, influencing American policy, corrupting American policy. They're also, I don't want to go down the whole TikTok thing. That's the whole story. Their kids get science and whatever on their thing. Our kids get pornography and hate.
And how to kill themselves and subway surf and mix drugs together. Yeah, of course, horrible.
But what can we do at the federal government level? Well, I'll tell you what. And this goes right on Gregory Meeks. This ticks me off too. So he really, really wants to be the chair again of the Foreign Affairs Committee because he's the ranking member because they're in the minority. But when Biden swept in, he became, he's the first African American chair, and very proud of that, and that's cool. And a lot of people in my district are proud of that, and that's cool. But what did he do with that? First of all, it's his focus. He loves to travel the world. He travels, over the last 15, 20 years, travels more than any other congressman. Yeah. And, if he's in charge, he can do that again. But, now you've got some power over shaping the bills. Republicans on the committee came to him and said, listen, we want these elements put into whatever the appropriations bill, the big one for foreign affairs. Like, we want to allocate things that'll limit the influence of these CCP organizations that are coming into the United States and trying to corrupt things, also trying to spy on children and spy on students.
Sleeping with politicians. There was the one in California.
Oh,
Forgive
Eric
me.
Swalwell. Oh,
Yeah,
my
Swalwell,
God.
yeah.
What a moron. I can't believe CNN keeps putting him
And they
on.
swept that under the rug.
Yeah, but he said, no, I'm not comfortable with that. I think it was like his argument was, this could have First Amendment ramifications. I'm like, all right, okay, maybe there's a legitimate concern there. Well, what's your response? This is a malign foreign country that's playing this long-term, I guess what they call it, unrestricted warfare game against us. If you think there's
So it's not what people have to understand. It's not with tanks and planes and
Right.
soldiers and Marines. They're doing through stealing our secrets, influencing our friends, influencing places like Africa,
sending fentanyl across the border.
which is a big problem, killing our people here a lot.
Right.
So it's more than just copyright infringement and
Right.
the fake DVDs and the fake, the fake Louis bags. It's more of hacking, financial terrorism. Somebody said on one of the shows the other day I was watching. So it's something that has to be taken seriously. And unfortunately, like you said our government, especially at the federal level, has been complacent, bought off, and/or asleep at the wheel. Sadly.
Yeah. So when he had the chance to do something, and the Republicans brought it to him, and you say, no, I'm not going to do that because of XYZ reason, either you really don't get it, you don't understand the threat at all, because you could say, okay, I have a First Amendment concern, can we change the language, let's do something. He did nothing. He was like, oh no, let me think about it, and then did nothing. So you're either, cozying up to China, you've got some other thing that's good for you. You don't want to rub China the wrong way, like the NBA doesn't like to rub China the wrong
LeBron James.
Yeah.
And by the way, how they allowed, I didn't watch the Olympics at all, to be honest with you. I usually do, but just the whole opening ceremony, I didn't, whatever. But how they allowed him to bring out the American flag is disgraceful. I mean, Beijing LeBron.
Right.
You let him carry the Stars and Stripes. To me, that was just unfathomable. But just wanted to bring that up while we were talking about LeBron James.
Yeah. Oh, and it's a shame that in the opening ceremony, it overshadows. You have all these, athletes who dedicated their young lives to being the best of the best, and now they get the chance to compete and they get the chance to represent our country, which, again,
Which should be a sacred event.
Right. And the opening ceremonies and political decisions kind of tainted that, and that's a shame because and I felt the same way. I was like, oh my God, I'm not that interested in this.
Yeah.
But there are people who I don't know if they're selling. I don't understand, but I can't tell you what Gregory Meek's ultimate motivation was. But here was a chance to stand up and do something to stop what's clearly China's influence, bad influence in our country. Take the smallest measure, and he did nothing. And
so, listen, we have to let the folks in the 5th District who have the ballot box power to keep this person in there who does nothing good, or bring someone new like you who has good intentions, who I believe is going to be able to do great things. You guys have to look at, why is this man kowtowing to the Chinese Communist Party? Why hasn't he taken the initiative when he's a powerful man with a powerful position? Mm-hmm. Why hasn't he done a small inclination of something to counter that? We don't know. I don't think Mr. Meeks will come on and speak to us on the record. I'm sure he won't. But if you'd like to come on and tell us and tell the constituents, you can come on and reach us. But look at what, and it's not just this district. We say it all the time. Look at what that incumbent has done, or sadly hasn't done. And then look at the person who's running against them. And the way the city, the state is, even the country now, what do most of us have to lose by switching the person there? Well, it'd probably benefit us all. So it's very disgraceful that Mr. Meeks has not countered the Chinese problem with the Communist Party.
And just like he won't come on and answer the question for you,
no incumbents ever do.
He's also ducking the debate again. Again, I'm challenging you, Greg. Just let's get out there in front of the voters in your home. I'll go to St. Albans, anywhere in the district.
I'll tell you what. I'll sweeten the pot. We'll host it, Queen's Voice. We'll moderate it. We'll put the whole rules, regulations, the whole response, the times. We'll run the whole thing. So if you do accept the gentleman's challenge here, Mr. Meeks, have somebody at your office reach out to Queen's Voice. We'll provide the venue, the whole nine. So anyone watching, why don't you badger Mr. Meeks to take the challenge up that Mr. King just put on the table? Because if you're running to defend that seat, you should have the guts to sit down and let your constituents who have the ballot power know what you've been doing and what you plan on doing. I mean, it's America.
Right. You know what? Actually, I forgot about it. I went to Washington a couple months ago to testify as a civic leader.
Okay.
And I stopped by his office. People are like, "You going in there?" I'm like, "I'm his constituent." And his attitude was the same. He's very gracious. He's like,
Sure.
"You're one of my constituents." So we chatted. I didn't talk politics much because I was there as a civic leader, and I talked
Sure.
about that. And I said to him, "Listen, my campaign's going to push you, though, this time around on the debate. And I think it's a service we need to provide to the voters." And he said, quote unquote, "It's a democracy." Now, I don't know.
That's so anti-American. It should be a prerequisite. If you
I
want to
kinda
run for
took-
office or you want to defend your seat, you have to debate. One or two. I mean, come on.
I kind of took that as a yes, and then I left the room, and my wife's like, "I don't think that was a yes."
I'm going to agree with her.
But thank you for offering to, and if, like I said, wherever you have it, if it, it's close to his home, if it's in Jamaica,
It could be in a neutral location too.
and if you want to invite, NAACP Jamaica, they were, to have someone bringing in questions. If you want to have NAACP Far Rock, I mean, get the full spectrum, so he doesn't feel like he hasn't responded to the Rockaway wave, but maybe he thinks, well, that's on Paul's part of town, and they're going to ask questions that.
Which does have some very interesting articles. I read it myself. So I see they've been covering you. They've been covering Thomas, which is nice. So, why he won't respond, only God knows. But it is a democracy, Mr. Meeks, and it should be a prerequisite for an incumbent, especially, to do one or two debates. If you're proud of your record, and you think you deserve to have the seat again, debate the man, or debate anybody else for that matter.
Well, we've got 9 weeks left. He's going to be in 7 states, other states, not New York, not named New York, campaigning. It's raising his personal brand, his personal
So
success
his personal
story.
profile at the expense of the fifth congressional
Yep.
districts, their constituents, and a lot of people there are suffering now. And he's out and about in 7 states.
And
All right, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. But when you guys go to the vote and you vote, remember this guy's here, boots on the ground. That guy's out in 7 states. So I think we've spoken enough about Mr. Meeks. But let's talk about anything else. You mentioned that you have that fundraiser coming up, and you mentioned your 5 pledges, which is great. Is there anything else that you're working on, or anybody else running, or elected officials that you're partnering with to try to get some positive agenda done, or anything you want to share with the viewers while we still have you?
Okay. Well, I'm getting great cooperation support from the Republicans in Congress who are on Long Island, so that's great. And definitely, I'm not an unknown. Last time I didn't,
No, you're definitely not.
last time I just walked on the field and said, "Oh, by the way, I'm a great candidate." And I've got a great skill set, but it doesn't mean you've got what it takes,
Sure.
And it certainly doesn't. I don't think a lot of people could do what I do and walk the district and go in areas and just connect with people. And I'm not. It's funny. I'm shy. I'm not like a people person.
But you're at a lot of events.
Yeah, but I can. There's common ground in all of us as Americans, and I want
Sure.
to find that. And that's really if nothing else, that's a win before we even get to the voting booth. No, thank you. And but. So I've got the support from these other Republicans. That's great. I'm going to have a lot more endorsements than I had the last time.
Great.
Definitely trying to work with the locals, like Dwayne Moore. Tom and Mike and I are all together in our own overlapping area in our own hometown, so we can walk to each other's houses more or less. But Dwayne Moore is a super candidate, and he's going to be a great leader in our country someday. It's his first time out, so that's rough. He's 29 years old.
He's going against another Duggan incumbent.
Alicia Hyman.
Yeah.
She's never had a general election opponent.
Well, we did, just while we're speaking about Ms. Hyndman, we did reach out to her office, didn't hear back, but we did challenge them to let us host the debate at least, and we haven't heard back. But unfortunately, to be very fair, right now we're batting 0 for a gazillion with incumbents who are taking this up on the debate.
Right.
So it's not just you. Don't feel slighted if Mr. Meeks turns you down. All of the incumbents have shunned the debate, and I guess they feel it's better for them to hide in their basement like Sleepy Joe, maybe.
Right.
Yeah, maybe that's.
Hey, listen, it worked.
It worked for him, right?
And Kamala doesn't really have any policies. That seems to work too.
Well, yeah, they want to keep from not talking and laughing, but that's another story.
Right.
But look, if there's any takeaway that our audience here has with, this interview and a lot of the other ones that we've done, a lot of them right here in this very booth here at Jax Inn Diner, is know what the candidates and the incumbents that you have out there are representing, And if you've been represented by the same person, which many of you have, and things have gotten worse and not better, your schools aren't better, your infrastructure, the crime, you're being sold out where they're putting illegal aliens ahead of you and your family and your community. You gotta open your eyes, read between the lines, and see who else, see what the options are, and what do you have to lose? I mean, it can't get any worse, in my opinion, under Meek's leadership or many of the other incumbents. So, look at what Paul King's about. Read his articles. He gets a lot of coverage. You see him at a lot of events. Why is this guy out and about all over the peninsula and the surrounding areas? Mr. Meek's out at 7 states. Upping his personal profile on, well, you could say at the expense of his constituents. So, that's how I would say. I can't tell anyone what to do, only you can make the choice, but the way that our city, state, and country are, everybody has to really look at the alternatives and see who they're going to vote for and who's better for your family and yourself and our future. Before we let you go, we're not going to keep Paul hostage. He was very gracious to come out today to the Jax Inn. Anything else you'd like to share or say hello to anybody out there while we're here?
Yeah. I'll just share that even though I'm new to politics, I'm not, a new entity out there. I've been involved in not just civics, but I've also been someone who's written about politics. I mean, you know how politicians all of a sudden evolve and change their positions, like Kamala any given day. You can read my stuff going back more than 20 years. I've got it all online.
So your stripes haven't changed.
Right. And my values haven't changed, and my belief in America and that everyone should have a fair shot here. And
Amen.
That, if we fix the system and we have freedom, that you let the people live to their potential, we'll do great things with our families. And that's what we need to get back to. And that's what I'm going to be working really hard at. Fix the system so that it works the way it's supposed to work again. And like I said, I just want to turn the keys over to the next generation.
Yeah, look, he was very adamant about saying, I'm not looking to spend more than a few terms there. I'm not looking to be Mitch McConnell or Pelosi and, sit there and die or stay forever there.
Right.
So pass the baton on to somebody after you, which is very noble. So I would like to thank Paul for coming in today. Very much appreciate him. I know we had to reschedule a few times, but better late than never. And it was nice to sit down with you. He has a lot of interesting things to say, some good values, good points. Peter Kafalis here with Queen's Voice, the Jax Inn. Please like and subscribe if you've yet to do so. And to everybody who's been sending in donations to help us, we appreciate it. We do this out of our own pocket. So things are tough sometimes. Cameras, gas, food, a lot of things. Everything's expensive for us as well. Queen's Voice currently doesn't have a sugar daddy. So if there's anybody else out there that would like to continue to send in donations, we're appreciative of everybody who's helped us out. You know who you are. Once again, Peter Kafalis with Queen's Voice, with Paul King here, running for the 5th Congressional District. Appreciate you tuning in. Be safe, and thanks again, everybody. Bye-bye.